All right, get ready, because today we're diving into some bold statements from Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be talking about his recent comments, the ones that got everyone talking about Canada, Panama, and Greenland.
Those were some eyebrow-raising comments for sure.
Yeah, they really lit up the news, so we're going to go beyond the headlines today and try to uncover what's going on.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating to, think about these remarks and what they tell us about, like, the bigger picture of global politics and how America sees itself
Absolutely.
on the world stage.
Yeah, and the source for this deep dive is an episode of the Timely Update podcast from Feero Studio.
Yeah, I know that one.
Host Alex Carter had expert Emma Hayes on to break it all down, to dissect what Trump actually said, why he might have said it, and what it could all mean.
We have to analyze these statements not just for their shock value, but for what they tell us about, like, political strategies, and all the nuances of international relations.
Exactly. It's a delicate dance.
Yes.
Okay, let's start with Canada.
Okay.
Imagine Trump at a rally casually suggesting that Canada should just become, like, the 51st state.
Right.
Like, what do you make of that?
It's interesting. This idea, while provocative,
it really is
not entirely new.
Right.
Trump has a history of making these bold claims that often play on, American exceptionalism and expansionism.
Yeah.
But we have to understand, why Canada might be resistant to that.
Yeah, it's not like they're just going to say, sure, why not?
Right, exactly.
What's the bigger picture here?
Canada has its own distinct national identity, right? A strong sense of independence.
Yeah.
A unique political and cultural landscape.
Totally.
Merging with the U.S. would mean, like, giving up a lot of that autonomy and, like, potentially facing a lot of cultural and economic shifts.
Right.
Plus, Canada has its own, social safety nets and systems in place, like universal health care, which are really different from the U.S. These are things that, Canadians wouldn't just abandon.
Totally.
Yeah.
So is this more about, like, appealing to a certain audience on the U.S. side than an actual serious proposal?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's likely aimed at, his base.
Right.
Who really embrace that idea of, American dominance.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that those remarks probably resonate differently in Canada.
Yeah, of course.
Where they're likely viewed with skepticism and maybe even some concern.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's interesting that this comes on the heels of Justin Trudeau stepping down as prime minister.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that plays into this at all?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The timing is definitely interesting.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if Trump's trying to capitalize on, like, this moment of political transition in Canada.
Like, he might see it as an opportunity.
Yeah. He might see it as an opportunity to push an agenda that kind of aligns with his vision of American influence.
It's like testing the waters.
Yes.
Seeing how these ideas land when,
when things are in flux.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But Canada isn't the only country that Trump has in his sights.
Oh, no.
He also made some pretty wild remarks about Panama and Greenland.
Yeah, those were something else.
He actually suggested that the U.S. should, like, acquire them, like, add them to our collection, right?
It's hard to know what to make of that at first glance.
Right. There's got to be more to it than just grabbing headlines.
Right.
What's the deeper game here?
Well, Trump has consistently expressed a desire to, like, project an image of American strength on the global stage. Right. And these comments, even if they're not meant literally, still feed that narrative.
Okay.
It's about reinforcing a worldview that emphasizes, like, American power and, like, a willingness to challenge international norms.
So it's more about the perception of power than any actual plan.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Panama and Greenland are both independent nations.
Right.
With their own governments and interests.
Yeah, of course.
Any attempt at, like, acquisition would face massive international backlash and be practically impossible.
Right. It would never happen.
Yeah.
But this isn't the first time that Trump has brought up Greenland, right?
Oh, you're right.
Didn't he talk about this back in 2019?
Back in 2019, he expressed interest in, acquiring Greenland. He even reportedly asked his aides to, like, look into buying it.
So what is it about Greenland that's got him so interested? Is it just the size?
It seems like Trump sees Greenland as, like, a strategic asset.
Okay.
Especially with, its location and, like, the potential for resource extraction.
Right.
He's talked about its mineral wealth. its potential for oil and gas exploration.
Okay.
And its importance in controlling Arctic shipping routes.
Right. And as climate change melts the ice, that becomes more and more important.
Right, exactly.
So Greenland's caught in this, like, geopolitical tug of war, right?
Yeah.
Over resources and strategic importance. And that's all, like, amplified by climate change.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about Panama? Why does Trump have his sights set there?
Well, besides the beautiful beaches
Right.
and the delicious coffee.
Yeah, of course.
The obvious answer is the Panama Canal.
Right.
It's essential for global trade.
Yeah.
And Trump has previously called it, like, a missed opportunity.
A missed opportunity.
For American dominance.
So he sees both Greenland and Panama, through this lens of economic and geopolitical advantage, even if his methods are a little unconventional?
Yes. It's important to understand that he's framing these remarks in a way that appeals to a sense of American ambition.
Right.
And exceptionalism, especially to those who feel like the U.S. has lost its standing in the world.
Okay, so we've unpacked Trump's perspective, but how is the rest of the world reacting to these pronouncements?
Yeah, I can't imagine they're just taking it lying down.
Right, they're not.
Yeah.
So let's start with Greenland.
Okay.
I'm guessing they weren't exactly thrilled about the idea of becoming, like, an American territory, right?
Not quite.
What did they say?
Greenland's officials have been really clear that their country is not for sale.
Okay.
They've emphasized that they want to remain like an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark.
Okay.
And chart their own course.
So a polite but firm thanks, but no thanks.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, what about Panama? They've got that crucial canal that Trump seems so keen on.
Yeah.
How are they reacting to his comments?
It's been a mix of amusement and concern.
Okay.
Some people have, poked fun at Trump's remarks.
Right.
While others worried about potential damage to trade relations with the U.S. and to Panama's, global reputation.
It's a tough spot, right?
Right.
They want to maintain a good relationship with the U.S.
Right.
But they also have to stand up for their own sovereignty.
Exactly.
Their own interests.
It highlights all the complexities of international relations.
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with, a leader who's known for unpredictable statements.
And provocative statements.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so we've got the global perspective, but what about here at home?
Yeah.
How are Americans reacting to this?
Right.
Are people taking Trump seriously? Or is this just another one of his attention-grabbing tactics?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And as with many things related to Trump, public opinion is pretty divided.
Yeah. I imagine his supporters probably see this as like a sign of his bold leadership.
Yeah, you're right.
And his America First agenda, right?
A lot of his supporters probably see this as further evidence of his strength and his willingness to, like, prioritize American interests.
Right.
Even if it ruffles some feathers on the international stage.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing his critics probably see it as another example of, like, his impulsiveness and his lack of diplomatic finesse.
Yeah, they probably see it as reckless,
right,
impractical, and, like, potentially harmful to America's standing in the world.
It's another wedge issue, isn't it? It just further polarizes, this already divided public.
It's an important point.
Yeah.
It's not just about the specific content of Trump's statements. It's also about how they tap into existing, political fault lines and reinforce existing beliefs and biases.
It's a reminder that even these outlandish statements can have real-world consequences.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they shape public opinion.
Right.
And they influence the political landscape, but we've only just scratched the surface here.
We have.
There's so much more to explore.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for part 2.
Yeah, can't wait.
Where we'll delve even deeper into the historical context behind these pronouncements.
Okay.
And examine how they connect to broader trends in global politics.
I'm ready.
All right, we'll be right back.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Donald Trump's remarks.
Yeah.
About Canada, Panama, and Greenland.
It's wild stuff.
We've been, exploring those immediate reactions and implications.
Yeah.
But I think now is time to look at the historical context.
Okay, yeah.
It's like these statements are kind of echoing patterns from the past. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah, when you hear Trump talk about acquiring these places, it's hard not to think about.
Right.
Like historical examples of territorial expansion, especially in the U.S. Right, here.
You're hitting on a key point.
Okay.
Throughout history, Powerful nations have often tried to expand their influence through territorial acquisition.
Right.
The motives are different, like economic gain, strategic advantage. Sometimes it's just a simple desire for power.
Yeah, just to be the biggest and baddest.
Right.
And, I mean, the U.S. is no stranger to this, right?
No, not at all.
I mean, look at our own history, the westward expansion.
Yeah.
Acquiring Alaska, Hawaii.
Right.
It's like a recurring theme in American history.
It is.
Yeah.
And these historical precedents, they shape how the world interprets and reacts to Trump's statements today.
Yeah.
They create, a sense of unease.
Okay.
Especially for countries that have experienced the downsides of colonialism and imperialism.
Right, like they've been on the other side of this.
Exactly.
So it's like these remarks are triggering a collective memory.
Yeah.
Almost like a warning, right?
Yeah, a reminder of a time when powerful nations just took what they wanted.
Right.
Regardless of, who was already living there.
And it explains why these statements have caused such strong reactions.
It does.
Right, especially from Greenland and Panama, who are, very protective of their sovereignty and independence.
Yeah.
It just goes to show that history isn't just something, we read about in textbooks.
It's not, no.
Right. It's still shaping our present-day realities and anxieties. But
it is.
How do Trump's statements fit into, the current geopolitical landscape?
Yeah.
What are the broader trends that this might be reflecting?
That's the important question.
Yeah.
I think one of the most significant trends that we're seeing is, a resurgence of nationalism.
Okay.
Not just in the U.S., but globally.
Yeah, we're seeing that everywhere.
We are.
More populist leaders, more movements that prioritize national interests above everything else.
Yes, often with that us versus them mentality.
Yeah, it's a very us versus them mentality.
And Trump's statements, with their focus on, American dominance and pursuing national advantage.
Right. It definitely aligns with that wave of nationalist sentiment.
It's like he's tapping into this deep-seated desire among,
among some
people
to see America assert its power. And reclaim its position on the world stage.
Right, kind of like that America First mentality.
Exactly. Yeah. And that desire often leads to this zero-sum worldview.
Okay, what do you mean?
The idea that, if one nation wins, another nation has to lose.
Oh.
It's a win-lose.
Right.
Instead of trying to find solutions where everyone benefits.
So it's less about cooperation and diplomacy and more about just competition and being the best.
That's a big part of this nationalist perspective.
Okay.
And you see it reflected not just in Trump's words, but also in his actions,
Yeah, give me some examples.
Withdrawing from international agreements,
right.
Putting tariffs in place.
His approach to, diplomacy.
Yeah.
It all points to this pattern of, America first.
Right.
Even if it, hurts global cooperation.
It's like we're moving away from a world order that's based on cooperation and shared interests to a world that's more, fragmented and competitive.
More competitive. Everybody's just fighting for their own little piece.
Yeah, that's a valid concern. Yeah. And Trump's statements, with their focus on nationalism and disregard for international norms, they seem to be pushing us further in that direction.
So we've got this backdrop of resurgent nationalism and this shift toward a more competitive world. But there's another piece here, right?
Yeah.
Resources.
Yes, absolutely.
Trump's interest in Greenland and Panama, it's not just about, expanding the territory.
Right.
It's about the resources.
Yeah. When he talks about Greenland, he's always mentioning, the mineral wealth. The mineral wealth. The potential for oil and gas.
Right.
It's he sees dollar signs.
He does.
In those melting glaciers.
Yes. And that highlights another major trend. It's shaping global politics.
What's that?
This increasing competition for resources.
Okay.
Which is driven by, population growth, economic development,
of course,
climate change.
And as those resources become more scarce and more contested, we're probably going to see more tension and conflict.
More tension.
Yeah.
And Trump's statements with their focus on, like, securing American access to those resources,
Right.
they reflect this sense that we're all competing for shrinking pie.
It's not just about
Right.
national pride or dominance.
It's not, no.
It's about
About economics and strategy.
Right. Control over resources is power.
And Trump's remarks, while they seem focused on specific places, they really tap into this broader anxiety about, resource scarcity and the need to secure American access to the resources that'll shape the future.
So we've got these interconnected trends of nationalism, resource competition, and this shift towards a more competitive world.
A more competitive world, right?
Yeah.
How do these trends play out in the cases of Greenland and Panama?
Right, because they're both in kind of unique positions.
They are. That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Greenland and Panama occupy these unique positions in the global system, which makes them, vulnerable to these bigger forces.
Okay, let's start with Greenland.
Okay.
It's this huge, sparsely populated island with all this potential for resource extraction.
Huge potential.
But it's also on the front lines of climate change.
It is, yeah.
Right, and as the ice melts, that opens up new shipping routes.
Right, and access to untapped resources.
Right, and so this combination of resources and strategic location has made it this focal point for these big countries.
It has, yeah.
The U.S., China, Russia,
They're all competing for influence.
Yeah, they're all vying for control, right?
Exactly.
And Trump's statements about acquiring Greenland, they play directly into that.
They do.
Right? It's a signal that America wants to be dominant in the Arctic.
Exactly.
And this is where those historical parallels we talked about, they come back into play.
They do.
Because even though Trump's rhetoric might seem outlandish, it still triggers those anxieties, especially for a place like Greenland, which has that history of being colonized and exploited. Right.
Yeah, they've been taken advantage of before.
So these remarks tap into that collective memory of past injustices.
Yes.
And it raises fears that,
that it could happen again.
Yeah, that history might repeat itself.
Exactly. It's no wonder that Greenlandic leaders have been so quick to reiterate their sovereignty.
Right, back off.
Yeah, and their desire to chart their own course.
Yeah.
Independent of any outside influence.
Okay, so Greenland is caught in the crosshairs of these trends.
Yeah.
What about Panama?
Right, they have that strategically vital canal connecting the Atlantic and Pacific, making them essential for global trade.
And historically, that importance has made Panama a target for foreign intervention.
It has.
And the U.S. has played a big role in that, right?
A huge role.
Remember the U.S.-backed coup that ousted Manuel Noriega back in '89?
Officially, it was to combat drug trafficking.
Right.
But a lot of people believe that it was really about securing American control over the canal.
So you can see why there's some unease in Panama when they hear Trump talking about acquiring the country.
Yeah.
It's even if he doesn't mean it seriously, it brings up all this historical trauma.
Right.
Right? It reminds them of how vulnerable they are.
How vulnerable they are.
To the whims of bigger nations.
Exactly. And it highlights how even seemingly casual statements can have real consequences.
Right. They shape perceptions and anxieties.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got Greenland facing the pressures of resource competition and strategic rivalry.
Yeah.
And Panama grappling with this legacy of foreign intervention.
Right.
It's a very complex picture, isn't it?
It is. It's complex.
But it's a good reminder that even these seemingly isolated statements can be indicative of these larger geopolitical forces at play.
That's right.
It's Trump's words are shining a spotlight
on these underlying trends of nationalism, resource competition, this shifting balance of power. They're revealing these fault lines.
They are.
And anxieties that are shaping,
shaping the world?
The 21st century.
Accurate way to put it.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
We talked about the historical context, geopolitical trends, and how these are impacting Greenland and Panama.
Yeah.
But there's another layer to all this that we haven't talked about.
What's that?
Rhetoric.
Okay.
It's not just what Trump says. No. It's how he says it, right?
It is, yeah.
So stay tuned for part 3.
Okay.
Where we'll unpack that. Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah.
We've been talking about Donald Trump's comments on Canada, Panama, and Greenland.
Yeah, those attention-grabbing comments.
We've dug into, like, the historical context, the global forces at play, but I want to focus on, the power of language.
Because it's not just what he says, it's how he says it.
Right. It's all about rhetoric.
Yeah.
And Trump is,
he's good at it.
He's a very skilled communicator. Yeah. He knows how to use language, to shape perceptions and influence opinions, right?
Yeah, and get people to support his agenda.
And to mobilize support for his agenda.
Right.
I mean, think about it. His statements about, acquiring these countries.
They get people talking.
Yeah, they generate headlines. They spark debate.
He stays in the spotlight.
He stays in the spotlight, exactly.
Even if the coverage is negative, it's still coverage.
Yeah, it's still keeping him front and center.
So what are, his go-to techniques? How does he frame these issues to, get people on his side?
One thing he does is appeal to, a sense of American exceptionalism, right?
Okay.
And nostalgia for that time when America was, the leader.
The undisputed leader.
Yeah, the undisputed global leader. And he'll use phrases like making America great again.
Yeah.
Restoring American dominance, things like that.
Right.
And to tap into that desire.
That desire to be number one again.
To be number one again, exactly.
So it's about, tapping into that feeling.
Yeah, tapping into this sense of,
America's been wronged, right.
Grievance.
Yeah.
This feeling that America has been taken advantage of.
Yeah. Yeah, and his rhetoric really focuses on,
It does. It focuses on
strength, dominance, putting America first.
Yeah, and it creates that sense of urgency.
Okay.
We need a strong leader to,
protect us.
Protect us from these threats.
And it's not just appealing to emotions, right?
No, it's not.
It's also about, simplifying.
Yes, simplifying these complex situations.
Yeah, complex geopolitical realities.
And presenting them as if, there are simple solutions.
He's the only one who can fix it.
Exactly. It's a very, classic populist tactic.
It is. He also uses a lot of repetition, doesn't he?
He does, yes.
America first.
Yeah.
Make America great again.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And repetition is a really powerful tool.
How so?
It, drills those phrases into your head.
Okay.
They become more memorable.
Right.
And over time, more persuasive.
It's like branding.
It is like branding.
Yeah.
And this mastery of rhetoric is part of why, he's been able to connect with so many people.
Yeah.
Even when his statements are, factually wrong.
Or illogical.
Or illogical, yeah.
So we've got the rhetoric, the way the media amplifies it.
Yeah.
The historical context.
The geopolitical context. It's all connected.
It's all tangled up together. So what does this all mean for the future of global politics?
That is the question.
It's a big one.
It is a big question. And I think one of the most concerning things is how it erodes trust in international relations.
Yeah. How so?
When you have a leader like Trump who, disregards diplomatic protocols.
Right. He doesn't play by the rule.
He doesn't play by the rules, and he prefers,
unilateral action.
Yeah, unilateral action.
Going it alone.
Yeah, it makes things unpredictable.
Right. It makes the world a less stable place.
A less stable place, less predictable.
So other countries don't know.
They don't know what to expect.
Whether they can trust us.
Exactly.
Because we're not reliable.
Yeah, it's like the rules of the game are constantly changing.
So what does that lead to?
Well, it can lead to, miscalculations.
Okay.
Escalations of conflict, and even war.
Right.
Because everyone's trying to figure out,
how to adapt.
How to adapt to this new world order.
It's like we're throwing a wrench.
We are.
Into the gears of global politics.
We are, and the outcome,
Who knows?
Nobody knows.
It's a gamble.
It is a gamble, yeah.
And it's why it's so important to, pay attention to these statements. Even the ones that seem crazy.
The crazy ones.
Right.
Yeah, we have to analyze them. Understand the context and,
the deeper forces at play.
Yeah, deeper forces.
Because even if Trump's ideas about, Canada, Panama, Greenland, they never actually happen.
Yeah.
They still give us insight.
They do.
Into
the anxieties, the ambitions.
The power dynamics.
Yeah, that are shaping the 21st century.
We've come a long way in this deep dive.
I know, it's been a journey.
From those eyebrow-raising statements to a much deeper understanding of these forces that are shaping global politics.
It has been quite a journey.
Yeah, we've explored the resurgence of nationalism,
Yes.
the competition for resources.
The power of technology.
And it's all, like, set against this backdrop of history.
Yeah, of history and anxiety about the future.
And all of this has huge implications for the future, right?
It does.
It affects everything, like...
Yeah, international relations, economic development, environmental sustainability, technological innovation, everything.
Yeah, it's all connected. So as we wrap up this deep dive... we encourage you to keep asking questions.
To keep learning.
Yeah, to stay informed.
And to think about things from different perspectives.
So that's how we build a better future, right?
Absolutely. A future that is more just, more sustainable.
And more peaceful.
Yeah.
For everyone.
Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.